Tina.
Hey, everybody. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:31. As you just saw, the meeting will be recorded. Please raise your hand if you have something to say. This is a meeting of the Building Committee 2.0, so I will be recognizing those members for comment. So I will move on to Design Lab.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for calling in today. I'm sorry this isn't in person. It is always better in person, but we feel that for this particular meeting, we can do it virtually, and it will work just fine. And we'll be back in person for our following meeting.
Great.
So I will pull up our slides. Go to screen. All right. Can you guys see this okay?
Yes.
So today we're obviously in our next workshop. We do have a different consultant team here today. We have our engineering team. They are Fitzmyer and Tachi. They are the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, the plumbing engineers, and the fire protection engineers. And they will be reviewing the systems that we're designing. And a lot of this we'll discuss what we talked about with a few of the town departments a couple of weeks ago, and how we're implementing some of that stuff into the building. So that will follow our kind of plan updates, where we're going to go over the programs. We're going to go over some plan changes that we've made. We're also going to do some brief reviews of the landscape and the exterior, because everything's starting to come together a little bit more. So we are about halfway through the design phase, halfway through design development as well. We will be putting out a 50% set next week. It's more of a check set for John Bates's team to look at, to make sure that we're considering everything within the project. And you'll notice here that I've added, may not notice, but it's the very bottom. I've added another line item for site plan review. Kind of included in that is variances required for this project. We learned about some setback requirements and some fire protection requirements that we may need to get variances for through the town. So we're going to try and start that project or that process with our set next week. And we anticipate that may take roughly 90 days based on our conversations with Valerie from zoning. But looking closer in at the calendar, as you know, we split this workshop into two because the exterior workshop last week was a critical meeting where we reviewed an enormous amount of information and some pretty detailed designs. And it was a great meeting. I think we had 40 something people show up, whether it was in person or called in. And we'll show you some of those renderings, but we're not going to discuss them, of course, because we have some other things to go over, and that's not this committee's purview currently. But in the coming weeks, on Friday, we're going to interview the staff again, and we're going to go over these same plans that we're discussing today. And then we'll put together a 50% design development set, and then we'll be working towards our final design development workshop, which is on 5/24. And then we'll rapidly work towards the 100% DD set to get another estimate, and we can start to kind of nail down that number a bit more. With this estimate, I believe we're getting 2 estimators to look at it as well, just to really start to be able to level these line items out. So just briefly go over what we've been doing. We met with 6 town departments. 6 town departments, sorry. We met with fire chief, the police chief, the Green Advisory Committee, and Arnie Epstein, who I believe is on this call, which is great to see, as well as traffic and parking, which was the police chief, and zoning, as well as, of course, Frank and Doug from facilities. We learned an enormous amount. It was a marathon of meetings a couple weeks ago, but it was definitely worthwhile, and it jump started a lot of the processes that we need to do. Interesting. Sorry, I must have jumped a slide. Oh, excuse me, I have the wrong presentation open. Sorry, I just had a draft open, but all right, back to it. So just a few of the kind of hits that we heard from our meetings, which there was way more than just these, but we learned from the fire department that our calculations should just be for the sprinkler system rather than the full fire truck hose. From the police department, we heard that we only need exterior cameras rather than interior, which is actually a pretty big statement. We're pretty excited about that. It's going to open up quite a bit of ceiling space, and some time as well for us. We learned a lot from the Green Advisory Committee, and we are hopefully planning to use a fully electric building. There's also a big vote in town, I believe this week or next week, regarding adopting the specialized stretch code, which is what this is kind of involved in. You'll hear more about that from the Fitzmyer and Tachi team. When we met with traffic and parking, we also talked about kicking off the one-way street transformation. And that meeting is also going to happen in the coming weeks, potentially on the 24th as well. And then we learned about the variances that we will have to go for when we met with zoning and with facilities. We talked about a lot of stuff. Some of the highlights are that it would be preferred not to have an irrigation system, and the septic system was recently renovated and partially replaced. And there's an existing water main running very close to the site that we're going to have to work around. So there was a lot more in that, but those are some of the highlights. So getting into more of the guts of this presentation. Of course, you guys have seen this slide many times. You'll continue to see this slide. Just to briefly review some of the programming that we're hearing from and that we're kind of adding into the projects. And you'll see these kind of highlights throughout the presentation. But to review what we went over with the exterior building committee, we're really leaning into the context of Stowe and the history of Stowe. So we've been doing more research into that and gathering some older images and some older books. We are bringing them a little bit into the interior of the building just to explain the importance of the interior program on the exterior. So this diagram is showing the programs that are really affecting the exterior design. So the community living room, the workroom, what we're calling the circulation gasket, and the community flex room. And this is just on the first floor. Of course, the second floor is mostly the children's library, but it has a similar effect on the exterior. So we presented these rather beautiful renderings, and we asked for pretty specific feedback on materials, the roof design, the window layout, and the base. And so we're working through those comments and kind of quantifying what we heard. So a few of the highlights, they preferred a low base, but not entirely. Kind of none of these opinions were unanimous, I think. Prefer contrasting cap and fields, less glass on the double height space, more kind of fine detailing, and materials should probably be more tactile like the existing building. So, and then that goes into a few of, or kind of adds into some of our design goals. That we've been building together as a team with you all. The library should be as accessible as possible, of course. There should be a separate entrance for the community room, a dedicated teen space. We advanced the massing option that we had discussed with both teams. We had talked about including an exterior terrace, which we're going to talk about tonight. We've been working through that option, and we are actually leaning towards taking the terrace out. And you'll see why later, but it ultimately may not provide the program space that you really needed to, and it may just be more of a dustbin, unfortunately. And then have some double height space and adequate custodial and support space, of course. So just to go over the terrace option briefly, and why we're not going to probably move forward with that. You'll see here in the plan, this is very similar to where we landed with you all last time. We have the new entrance abutting the new circulation desk with the workroom behind it, and then we have this kind of condensed stair elevator ramp that then goes up to the collection space under the historic building. And then mostly everything else is the same. We have this large seating area with a double height corner, the restrooms that are shared between the community meeting room and the addition of the library, as well as supporting the rest of the library. So just a zoomed in view of this. We're proposing some seating area right at the top of the steps, but we feel that this axis of the ramp, elevator, stair, workroom is getting very condensed and may not be creating the kind of openness that we're looking for in this project. And so we are and then on the second floor, everything is also quite similar. We're trying to add in a second double height space around the stair just to break up the ceiling of the first floor. But it again, the entrance to the children's collection is quite compact. The exterior terrace is quite compact at 110 square feet. That's a little more than 10 feet by 10 feet. In this size, it's roughly, I think, 8 by 12, with 2 access points on it. And here you can just see some more detailed layouts, the restroom and the office or storage for the children's library, and the children's program getting a little more laid out here. And Audrey will walk you through kind of this more refined plan without a terrace.
Yeah, so with a lot of things that Andrew was pointing out about how the circulation was really condensed, we were really trying to open up the connection between the addition and the original building. And so by removing the terrace, we were able to move the stairs to where the gasket that has been, and really start to make it more of like the circulation gasket area. And then, so this is more of a zoomed in of pretty much what you guys have seen so far. Majority is remaining the same with the majority of the collection space having a few seating areas thrown throughout. But we're also starting to look at what is distinguished between like what is solid and what is glass on the interior. And so you can see that a bit with the blue dashed lines on the plan. And looking at like what's a full height glass versus a half wall. So you're able to keep books on one side, but still get light through above the stacks. And then, yeah, so moving on to some of the precedents that we had, you guys have seen a lot of these precedents, but it's really wanting to like iterate the things that we're looking for and having the 3 small meeting rooms with the glass, allowing the light from the light well, the existing amphitheater area. Then throughout the collection, we're looking to have a variety of seating areas, tables, comfortable seating, not necessarily computer spaces. That would be more up in the historic rooms, but workspaces like that. And then in the teen room, we're really looking to have a variety of program spaces. So you have the study, you've got some of the collection, and then more relaxing area for them. And then looking at a zoomed in version of the, like where you enter into the addition, we have started to moving the stairs into the gasket will start to play off of the verticality of the turret. And so as you're moving up the stairs, you're also following along the path of the turret. But then we're getting more workroom area in there, as well as opening up opening up like the visibility between the browsing and arrival area and the collection space. So
And-
it's not as compact and compressed as the previous plan was.
And it gives us this nice wide stair between the workroom and the elevator. It could be a place to sit, or it could just be a passing point, but having in the terrace plan, we need basically code minimum width stair, which can be quite tight to pass on, especially when that may be the main kind of transportation path within this gasket.
And then here we've got some lower compressed browsing and arrival areas. So you've got your circulation desk and some other, like a variety of browsing and seating areas, but with that lower ceiling that we'd have. Can you go back one?
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. Sorry. And then we're also trying to include the community living room with the higher area, the higher ceiling, so you're able to get a little bit more breathing space. And then what we're doing is we're starting to open up that browsing and arrival area. These are preliminary, just rough sketches as we're looking at it in the model. But if you can see on the plan, you're basically standing in the furthest point of the building and you're looking back towards the collection space, and you can start to see where all of the circulation is. And it opens it up.
And there are like a few things to just take note of here. The windows in the children's space on that second level, that's a fantastic design opportunity. It may be this, but it may be something completely different, but we do plan to have that kind of double wall system almost that looks into the double height space. And then the vestibule here, you know, that may not be a full glass wall either. So it's just to say that these are more for looking at the architectural spaces rather than the actual details in these images. We're still massaging the big moves here. And that's what we really want to look at with these renderings.
And yeah, okay. So then as you guys know, we're looking at different ideas of the community room and having a space for a variety of programs. And then if you want to go to the next one, where we can fit roughly 30 to 40 people, but also opens out directly onto that outdoor plaza. And so, yeah, again, this is one of our just basic 3D views, how that room would start to feel as you're in it, with essentially as many chairs as we can possibly fit, but also seeing that view out onto the plaza. Next one. And then we start to look at what the circulation is doing, where the stairs will go along the original building, but also have a little bit of a double height space alongside them. And as you can see here, this is standing at the bottom of the stairs going up to the second level or the upper level. And you really do have that straight shot of the turret.
And so this view really helps with that kind of explanation of why moving the stair to the location of the terrace is pretty important to us. It does a lot to frame the turret and to kind of exclaim the importance of it and its centrality on the design almost, but it also opens up the facade of the existing building to be on the interior and within a double height space. So it really creates an awesome moment within the connection point of this building.
And then we move on to the upper level, which again, the majority of, or half of it, I suppose, is going to be pretty much the same with the existing side. And then how that stair being moved, or removing the terrace and moving the stair, really helps to open up the connection between the upper and the lower levels. So we have the historic building, essentially still the same. We were thinking of the quiet reading room having a variety of reading spaces, but then a small amount of the collection, along with the tech room, the room with the fireplace in the back, would be able to seat roughly six computer desks. And then if you want to go, yeah, okay. So looking at how those spaces would start to have that variety in them. And then we move to the addition side. And so we're starting to look at how you can get two, partially three double height spaces. I'm counting what's around the stairs, the partial three, because you're moving through that. But you're able to connect the two levels a lot more visibly, without, there's still going to be boundaries, so it's not completely open, but you're able to see between the two. The children's program space has expanded a bit now that we don't have the terrace there. Taking a bit more of that in the children's area. And then we've located the family restroom within the children's area so that there's easy access there. And then we really tried to make the lobby space more efficient. so that when you come up these stairs, you really have two choices. You can go to the children's, or you can head towards the existing building. So where you're standing right now is if you were to come out of the elevator, and you have those two choices just as well. And you're starting to be able to see down to the browsing and arrival space from that area. And then so we're looking into just a variety of program spaces in the children's collection, along with trying to incorporate a nook of some sort. And then this has a bit of a example of what I was talking about, where we have the shelves on the lower part of the wall, but then still are able to get some light in through the top. So just kind of playing around with this idea in against like the double height spaces in the children's area. And this is what we're starting to look at in that space.
So again, this is, I mean, on the left, you'll see that main corner of the double height space that we've talked a lot about. But on the right is the new double height space that we get with this non-terraced design. And it's the same design study. We're going to go through a whole design study of what these walls actually look like, and how a sitting area or a nook and the bookcases and the windows all fit together within this. But the way that these two double height spaces come together and kind of create a bridge for the children's library, we think is a really nice space. And it also creates this great kind of circulation desk moment where the employee at the desk can see the full like 1,000 square feet of this one space, but it also separates the spaces into two pretty defined spaces, which could be separated by age or reading type or program. So that's kind of the update of the plans. Just to briefly go over the landscape review, because that also has a impact on the first floor. We've been pretty linear with the landscape design, and we've kind of come to some pretty strong agreements on what it should be. So just briefly, we've expanded the outdoor seating area near the community room. Just create a bit more kind of overflow space. And the garden between the entry plaza and the outdoor seating is more staggered to create a kind of natural boundary to limit or slow down the circulation between the outdoor seating and the entry plaza. And that's mostly for children, so that they don't sprint directly from the seating area straight to the street. But we've also created or added in a small wing wall to limit that access as well, but it's still open to the raised walkway on Common Road, which will also be one way. So it's mostly around safety, but it creates a really nice enclosed but accessible space. And then we've added some minor plantings. We started discussions with the garden club on the best place for the Head Memorial Garden, which will most likely be in this accessible walkway area. And they started to kind of program out some activities here just to show what will work and how much more flexible it is now, or will be versus now. So children's story time, a book fair, or a kind of cocktail hour fundraiser, which was actually happening at the library last Wednesday when we went to have the exterior presentation, which was really cool to see. So just our plans overlaid on the landscape plans, it's kind of all coming together in plan at least. So I'll just kind of leave it on these plans, and I'd love to hear anybody's opinions on these. I know we're not kind of showing options here and choosing between one or the other, but that's because we've really narrowed this in together with you all. So this last kind of sticking point has been the terrace, which it is unfortunate, but it's kind of a product of the iterative design project. Kat?
Sorry, are you looking for feedback?
Yeah, love feedback.
So you don't have a side-by-side comparison of, say, like, I don't know, like, is there a slide that you have that just shows the floor plan side by side?
Unfortunately, we don't actually have that in this set, I believe.
Okay, I was just curious, like, so does this expand the square footage that you have of the interior space? Like, I'm assuming that it does.
Yeah, we get roughly 110 more square feet.
On like the lower level, or divided between the two?
Mostly on the second level.
Second level, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious, because sometimes when you have those, you know, 2-level ceilings, you don't, you know what I mean? Like when you don't have a floor space above you, I was just curious if you're losing, you know, the square footage. Say, for example, like if we already have that one double-heighted square in the corner. So I was just, you know, so you can't, you know, you're losing the square footage on the children's collections on the top floor. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't repeating that again by getting 2 open areas. I love open areas. I love double height. You know, I think it's gorgeous, but I just want to make sure we're not losing too much program wise to that aesthetic.
So we can still account for all of the books within this layout, as well as if there were a side-by-side comparison, you'd see that the program space actually expanded a little bit in the
Great.
library.
Yep.
So.
Awesome. And then I had two other questions. One, with the outdoor plaza area with the landscaping, the little rows that you're showing as garden space, is there any way that we can make that so that it's more flexible space? I'm concerned, like I understand the boxing in of the area, like so where the entry plaza, between the entry plaza and the outdoor seating. So right now you've got like kind of rows of what I would assume would be some sort of either floor height gardening or planter, like, you know, raised beds. That just limits us, if there is a bigger event, to not being able to put any kind of furniture or anything in that area. I'm just curious if we can maybe limit it to one row with some trees that you can work around, or have movable garden type boxes in case in the future anybody ever wants to expand, you know, that programming space.
Yeah, we can talk to the landscape architect about that and look at capacities of these courtyards.
Yeah,
Really see how
I mean,
many
I get the idea and I love it, like of having the walls. I just think I'm just curious, like, you know, just the separation. It's going to be one of those things where you build a fabulous living room, but everybody hangs out in the kitchen kind of a thing. I just want to make sure that there isn't that kind of situation where you're blocked, like, you know, half the people are in one area where they're near the food and the other half are, you know what I mean? Like, that's just my one concern about filling in that area too much with fixed structures. Other than obviously trees that you work around and things like that. But if you're filling that entire space with the maze of planter boxes, I just get a little worried that it's gonna disrupt the flow.
So these spaces are, it will be a flat kind of surface. There won't be planter boxes. There'll be ground cover within those parts coming in.
Yep.
And so, I mean, in the theoretical future, those could be filled in or stepped on.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure it looks like walls, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
so it's
like from the rendering.
Yeah, it is not walls, which maybe the confusion there.
All right, awesome. And then my last comment, and again, I apologize for taking time for this, but the exterior renderings, I know we're not spending much time at all on those this evening, but I just wanted to say that I did listen to the presentation, and I think like a lot, like it was definitely like a 50-50 feedback in terms of like, is it too not matchy enough? Is it too matching, like this kind of thing? And I think that it definitely seems like there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to get the look of the addition to look right, I think is part of the issue that people were having. And it felt very imposing, I think, compared to the original building. I think a lot of times when you do go all glass, you don't have that same, like, because it's all clear, it minimizes the size of it. But I think given the, large roof line and the heaviness of the building, like just based on the renderings made with red or to match or whatever, I think that was a bit of a problem. But I was just curious why, like it looked like,
Kat,
oh, yeah.
can we talk about the exterior at the next meeting? Because
Oh,
tonight
for
we're really
sure.
just gonna
I just want,
focus on
I know that there's only one more workshop, and I
Yeah.
definitely had some points that weren't made by anybody, so I just wanted.
If you have any you want me to share with the group,
Yep.
I've already gotten a bunch of those, so feel free to
Perfect.
send those to me and
I will do
I'll
that.
do it.
Thank you.
Thanks. I wanted to say that I thought tonight's renderings were very exciting to see, like viewpoints from the inside. That is really exciting. As far as the outdoor, children's patio, for lack of a better term, I mean, again, that would have been nice to have, but I really like the movement of the stairs that you guys have shown us tonight. Again, I think it opens it up a lot. It gives the staff a lot more space, at least it looks like it. Yeah, I think it's really starting to feel real.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, you raised your hand.
Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
I was just curious about, from the perspectives where there is glass on the second floor, the open height, is that going to go to the ceiling? It looks like it is. So those spaces won't be open, thereby perpetuating the issues we have with noise from the first floor to the second floor.
No, they will definitely not be open. It will be glass at the most transparent. There will be, and it will be, the walls will be specifically like audibly rated. It's called an STC rating. And so they'll be denser as well. So we're specifically avoiding that problem. So yeah, the glass will go all the way up, whether if that's the design, it may be a wall with a window in it, but
Sure.
there will not be any actual open spaces from the children's space down. From the lobby space, there will be some open spaces,
Right.
with the stair and
Sure.
the adjacent one.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
This perspective with the little drawing in the plan in the bottom left and then showing the 3D is super helpful to get oriented.
Aisha.
Thank you. I will echo a little bit of what we've heard already. These renderings are so exciting. It feels actually real, simplified with the external views that we saw, that I saw as an observer in the last meeting. So just really nice to see what's happening, and I think it all looks really great. I also have some questions about this open area here, but I won't belabor the point. But from the view from the children's room, it feels like you're just looking at the elevator. Is that right?
You're looking at the stair below and a bit of the circulation desk and the elevator as well, or the lobby elevator.
Okay. So where this like family all the way on the right is standing, that's just a blank wall. Is that what we would see there?
Uh, it doesn't have to be. I've been thinking about that specifically since we've been like aiming to make that space a double height, and that could be like a pretty celebrated moment as well. I mean, we could have like a large wood wall or hesitant to say a mural, but you can start to imagine like a artwork hanging or something
Yeah.
there. So it's more of an opportunity than a blank wall.
Okay, cool. I would express strong support for that because I think it's a really cool view and it would be nice to utilize that well. And then my other question was the entryway to the children's room. That door, it could just be the perspective, but it looks like just a very single narrow door. Will that, I know it has to be like a certain width compliance wise, but would it be possible to make sure that you could fit like a double wide stroller, like a parent and 2 kids on each side, just to make it as accessible as possible without losing too much of that space down to the below?
Yeah, we'll work on expanding that
Okay.
kind of crunch points. That has been a point in our office or internally that we've discussed, and right now we're just a bit above the code minimum, but we would also like to be a bit wider than what we have here. So.
Okay, thank you. But I love the repositioning of the stairs and sacrificing the outdoor space for that. I think that's great. That's
Awesome.
all. Thank you.
Okay. Doesn't look like anyone else has any comments, Andrew, so you want to move? Oh, Lisa, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, it took me a minute to click everything. In the computer room, it looks like the windows that are on the side where the slanted roof are those going to get reopened?
Yeah,
They will.
Unbricked, I should say.
yes.
Unbricked, yeah, they will. We'll bring those back to the exact location that they were in and match the existing windows as much as possible as well, which should be very doable.
Got it.
In my experience. So.
And Sunny.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question. If you're looking at the rendering from like the elevator to the children's area, is there a reason that we decided to have it open like to the left there where you can look down? Is that like a specific reason for that? I was just kind of curious.
Let's see. So internally, we were looking at a lot of images like within the model like this, and we didn't have that open before, and it was feeling very condensed as you moved into the building and kind of into the collections, and even in the model it was getting quite dark, and so we're trying to break apart that the fields of ceiling within the addition, which you actually start to feel within the existing building right now. We're trying to break that down and bring more light in from the upstairs. And that was our kind of main goal with that opening.
Okay. If I could see that again with like the view from the elevator. Yeah, I was just curious because we have like this platform here and then we have stairs and then we have the opening to the left. And then so to the right, do you have a rendering for what's to the right, or is that coming later? What can you just remind me what that is? If like
This-
you're looking at the right side,
Oh, this wall here.
you like all the way to the right. Yeah, like past the staircase.
So that's the existing building wall. So that's just brick, original 1892 brick with all the sandstone work as well. So we're going to be opening that up and running the stair next to it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a better feel for what it looks like. It's really difficult for me to conceptualize. So thank you for explaining it, but it looks great.
Yeah, no problem. So and this view here is the bottom of that stair. And so this wall on the right is at the kind of top above the beam is all original brick with the windows in it. So that's the same wall.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate those of you that are on from the public, but we are not taking public comment right now. So Andrew, I don't know if you have anything else to share with us before moving on.
I do not. I would just like
Okay.
to introduce our MEP team.
Great.
And they will kind of review some more nitty gritty of the building and the design process. And kind of what's come out of a lot of our meetings lately. So Peter, Barbara, and Jeff.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, good evening, all. My name is Peter DePerna with Fitzmyer and Tachi. On a call with us today, as well as our project executive, Jeff Romeo, and project manager, Barbara Volandi. I will be doing most of the presentation today and hopefully walk you folks through some of the design processes. Andrew, if you're okay, I'm going to share my screen since I have the.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Oh, if you have it, then that's fine. We can walk.
I do have it, yeah.
Perfect. I know I gave you plenty of time to get this incorporated. One of our takeaways, one of our goals today at this meeting would be to get input from the town as far as our design concepts, ideas, and any feedback. We would also be looking for the town to help sort out some of the fire protection issues that we keep facing. And we could talk about some of the other measures to meet the new stretch code. And so so when we start looking at systems and how we take an approach and what we think about for a project is we try to target some goals that we think would be important to the client. And in this particular case, knowing the library, how they operate with children, and some of the importances of robust systems that will give you a very long reliability, something that will last for many, many years, hopefully into the 30-year range, something that is easy to work on and maintain. And so, and most importantly, energy efficient. We were talking in terms of energy efficiencies or energy reductions and basically energy savings. How and where that energy is being generated, we can certainly have that discussion down the road. But the goal here was to develop a system that is very cost effective to operate. And with that said, the heart of the HVAC system is what's called an air handling unit. That unit is made up of several components. We have supply fans, we have heating and cooling coils, we have dampers, which will modulate the amount of outside air coming into the unit, and return or exhaust fans that will take air from the building and recirculate it back through or exhaust that portion of the air. Now, to make this system energy efficient, we use what's called a variable flow or variable amount of air. That airflow will vary depending on the load in the space. So you don't have a system that is operating at 100% all the time. This will vary based upon how many zones, how many people are within the space. We also use what's called, we vary the amount of ventilation air into the space as well. And that's important because ventilation air or outside air is extremely expensive to condition. And so by reducing that amount of air from a code minimum to a maximum of your maximum occupancy, we can save energy by not using that outside air. We've implemented a strategy called demand control ventilation. And what that does, it senses how many people are in the space, how many gases, off-gassing from the folks, and it'll bring in the amount of outside air that is required to keep people comfortable. This unit also has the ability to use, we call in the industry a free cooling. It has the ability to bring in 100% outside air into the building. So when there's times throughout the year that are at the right temperature and conditions, we'll bring in 100% outside air and use no mechanical cooling or no mechanical heating. There's two purposes for that.
Probably a night like tonight, right, Peter?
Absolutely. This would be the perfect night to have some free cooling. There's two things even in the industry in the last, I don't know, it wasn't that long ago that every other call we got from our clients was, how much more ventilation air can we bring into our building? It wasn't that long ago we were dealing with COVID and all the concerns of, especially with children. Having this ability to bring in not only 100% outside air, but throughout the year, you could increase your ventilation rate to about 50% of the ventilation air, which would help purge out any contaminants of the kids. And we all know kids will be, if there's 50 or 60 kids in the room, probably half of them will have a cold at some point. So I think it's important to be able to regulate that and increase it to meet the goals and, again, keep people healthy.
Yeah, I think the overarching effort that Peter's put into selecting systems here is resiliency, flexibility, efficiency, and reliability. 4 things that all carry very important weights. And I think this system, the intent is for the system to balance those things.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So when I mentioned variable flow or variable air volume into the space, we look at how we can break the spaces down into different zone controls. And what a variable air volume unit is, that device will regulate the amount of air that's coming into the space that is needed just to heat it or cool the space. There's no excess air. It's not a constant volume system. You'll bring the right amount of air in to condition it. And again, that helps us to keep the total amount of airflow down to a minimum and not waste energy. It also allows for better temperature control within the different zones. So for example, we have some open office spaces, we have some meeting rooms. In a meeting room that is primarily used, on occasion, we have 2 people in there, and may have 20 people in there. By using a variable volume or variable control device, we're able to regulate that air to meet the demand of the amount of people that are within the space. And that's been proven again to really be energy efficient. If your zones are closed off and you want to shut the boxes off completely, you're able to do and close off the zones, and every one of them will have a thermostat, so you can set the temperature and regulate that as well. Some of the offices, we don't give everybody an office a thermostat. We like to group multiple offices in, and we'll always ask the folks who gets a thermostat. So most of the time it's by seniority. So when the question comes around, feel free to chime in and tell us we'd like to have the control over that. And if you can see some of the ductwork that's coming down, we're going to back up for a second, Andrew. I think it's important. The ductwork and the equipment is going to be located outside of the building, somewhere on the roof configuration. And we'll have some ductwork running down up through the building. And this large duct off to the right is the return air system, which will take air again back out of our space.
And all of these ducts will be hidden by ceiling systems.
Right.
And the ones in the historic building will be coming through the attic. So we're not just running a bunch of silver ducts through this building.
No, in the end device of the diffusers, the device that will distribute the air will be matched up to whatever ceiling configurations you have. Whether it's on a historical configuration, we can find ways to hide them or match that to the look of the space itself. Depending on how much glass we end up with, and it looks like there's some additional glass, we may put in some additional baseboard radiation or hot water radiation under that glazing to help offset any of the downdrafts and make sure we have a very comfortable space. So we told you how we're going to move air in and out of the building, and the next part of that system is called a heat pump, and I think that's probably been on everybody's mind in the last year or so as we try to move more towards a efficient, greener environment. Heat pumps are a device that is similar to what you have in the old houses. It's like an air conditioning system, but it will provide both heating and cooling into the heating coil in the air handling unit to warm or cool the air itself. It very similar. It works basically, if you're cooling, it's the compression cycle, which will provide the cold to the coils. And in the heating season, it basically acts as it reverses that. So the heat, instead of being rejected to the exterior, is rejected back into the unit. And it provides for a very, very efficient means to heat and cool a building. There are some limitations with these systems, and one of the ones that concerns us as design consultants is the temperatures in which they like to operate. Typically around 20 degrees. Different manufacturers have limitations. Some of them are 20, some of them are at 40, others can go down below that. But once we start to get below 20, 25 degrees, they can have problems with the heat pumps. They're not as efficient, and they have to work a lot harder to produce the heat. And a lot of our designs are adding backup heating elements, whether it's a gas-fired boiler or an electric boiler. And we can have that discussion about being completely electrified here, or look at using natural gas as a backup to the system. And in either regards, when the heat pumps get to be below 20 degrees, what we'd like to do is switch over from using the heat pump to either electric or gas-fired boiler to provide heat to the building. And we also like that for a backup situation. Heat pumps are great, but they are a complex piece of machinery that if in the wintertime they fail, it could be down for an extended period of time. And so, more conventional equipment such as a boiler is a good means as a backup.
And so just to take a step back here, it's really important to understand what's actually about to happen within the town of Stowe, and the vote that is happening very soon regarding what's called the specialized stretch code. And that is basically requiring that, very simplifying this a lot, but it's requiring that all new buildings are all electric. And there are some caveats there about, if you have a mixed fuel solution, then you also need to have this kind of secondary, basically carbon recovery system. They simplify it down to putting photovoltaic panels on the roof, or being able to in the future. But what Peter is getting at here is that we're basically reaching as far as we can to electrify this building in anticipation of adopting the specialized stretch code. And there are these concerns about the temperatures being lower, which will then add costs to the construction project and potential maintenance problems.
That's the balancing of
Yeah.
efficiency, reliability, resiliency. We're trying to, those things all have to work together.
Exactly. And so what we're trying to decide is how far of an example should the library be in terms of kind of green efficiency. Like, will it be acceptable to the building committee to have a mixed fuel building but that fuel would only be used during a backup system? Right, Peter, is that
correct? And if there's issues below 20 degrees with the heat pumps, then you have a backup boiler system as well. So it would operate very infrequently. And what we see in one of the concerns we have, the reason why we bring this up, and we certainly understand your goals, we have concerns about longevity of the heat pumps. We've had some clients that are 15 years old and have some concerns about them lasting 30 years. So there is some long-term issues and long-term costs that need to be considered if we decide to go fully electric. And the other concerns we have is to make sure that the town is fully aware of some of the energy costs and what, you know, the increase in utility bills that will come with the new addition and going fully electric. Now you guys have a great rate, so your impact may not be as significant as some of the other folks in downtown Boston that are experiencing this. But it is just something to consider.
Peter, Morgan has a question. Go ahead, Morgan.
This Morgan.
Hi there. So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand this. You're suggesting that we have a heating system that utilizes both electric and gas for fuel and can sort of vacillate between them depending on the temperature or depending on how you want to use it?
We would set it up to be dependent on the temperature and dependent on if there is a failure. So
Okay.
if the heat pump fails, then you don't have heat into the building. And I tell clients all the time, if it fails in the middle of summertime, can be uncomfortable, but with the way we set the strategy up, you have an air handling unit that could provide 100% of air into the space, so you would not have to shut your building down. It may be a little warm, but you know, this is New England. Sometimes we like the heat. But if it fails in the middle of winter time, then that's where the problem is. You know, and so that's our concern is failures over the winter, maybe not day one or day two, but 5 years or 10 years down the road. You know, we try to look at these buildings to last 30 years. You know, and try to design systems that you don't have to replace within that time frame.
I appreciate that.
Good.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so the heat pumps are great, but what we're experiencing with some of our larger clients that have installed these 10, 15 years ago is that replacements are happening in about the 15-year range, which is becoming more and more widespread throughout the industry.
Right. My other concern would be what maintenance costs would be associated with it on an annual basis. And I say this because we have a very similar system, and it is nice, especially since on HLP we have a really good rate. But I think that I'm just curious how, like, I guess this is the best thing that you're saying to balance all of those different factors and also take into consideration a backup.
Yeah, as far as maintenance, you know, the air handling unit, really it's grease the bearings or replace belts. And I think in this particular case, we didn't have belts on the motor. So it's grease the bearings once a year and replace the filters every couple of years. Excuse me, every 6 months or every year, depending on how bad they get bloated up.
Yeah.
So that's pretty general maintenance. That's something that the town could do on a regular basis if they choose, if they have the staff that chooses to do that. The heat pumps, you know, they need to be verified that they still have the proper amount of refrigerant. You need to be cleaned. And most of the time, it's probably 50-50 if some of the larger clients we deal with have the maintenance staff that are trained in this system, they go ahead and do it themselves. If not, a lot of the towns would need to bring in a third party for the yearly maintenance.
And then my last question, and then I'll let you go back to your presentation. Can I assume that with all of our interest in making the library sort of sustainable, that there'll be some type of smart system that will activate and pay attention to what's going on and switch between what's needed at whatever temperatures are set, or will,
yes,
you know, like you were saying, for how many people are there? Yeah. Okay. All right.
So
thank you.
we would have an integrated direct digital control system is the industry language, and that's really just a smart system that looks at all the different sensors we place in throughout the system. One of them is an outside air temperature sensor, so it knows what's going on outside. Another part of that is the time clock, so we can shut the system on and off during a night setback, and it's something we can touch base. But a lot of times we will shut the system off and let the building get down to 60 degrees at night in the wintertime, or 80 degrees during the summertime. And so that, and I don't know what your hours of operation, but a lot of libraries are not open 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They're operating on a reduced hour schedule. So, you know, if you have open for 8 or 10 hours, the rest of the time you can let the building get a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer, and thus saving energy.
Right. That's
So
what we try to do now, even with our system as it is. You know, if we're not open, we have it reduced. And that helps with the cost.
Right.
Aisha has a question.
Yep. Just trying to answer the last question, but yes, Alicia.
I'm on mute, sorry. Hopefully it's just a quick clarification. So the only backup option isn't gas, right? So the backup boiler could be electric energy,
Correct.
right? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
The way we design a system, you have the flexibility to do either or a combination of both. One of the concerns that is, we try to balance out cost as well, and there is a significant increase in electric requirements if we make it fully electric on day one. And that's just something to consider. And again, the system would be smart enough that it would turn itself off. We could program it to, do night setback all automatically. You tell it what time you want to have the building warm up or cool down. And when you guys stroll in, it would do it automatically. So we just need someone to learn how to use the system. Any more questions? And I certainly appreciate the questions. Usually as engineers bore the heck out of people, and the guys
Yep,
glaze
for
over,
now,
so we
we're pretty
appreciate
good.
it.
Thank you.
Into the next slide. So jumping onto the electrical, again, our design strategy is about energy conservation. And we just took a quick snapshot of potential lighting layout for the space. And a couple of things we wanted to point out is we'll be using LED lights to reduce energy. We'll have photo sensors, so if nobody's occupied the space, the lighting will shut off. And we'll also have photo cells near the exterior glazing. So in the small office, you'll see two circles, if you can make them up, between the large squares. One is an occupancy sensor, one is a photo cell. And what that photo cell does, it looks at the amount of light coming in from the windows. And Jeff, you can feel free to jump in with an electrical background. But basically, it'll reduce the output from the lights if there's sunlight. So you won't have competing elements to deal with and overlight the room. So it'll automatically dim your lights based upon the amount of sunlight that's coming in. That does two things. One, it's saving energy. Two, it's really giving you a comfortable space.
Industry terminology, we're doing daylight harvesting is what we're doing.
All right. And then the outlets is just per code.
I think Lisa has a question.
Yes.
I
Lisa.
do. So I work in a facility that has the photo cells that sense the ambient light. And we have a condition that could be similar to the west-facing spaces in this building, where the glare is quite obvious for a couple hours in the afternoon, and it renders the interior dark because the cells are picking up on the light, the ambient glare really, and are darkening the room too much. So this building was built 5 years ago, so I'm sure technology is improving all the time, but I'm just curious about that given where the windows are going to be in this building.
Well, yeah, technologies have definitely changed and improved. I think the placement of the sensors is going to be important. I don't know if it would be a solution in your current the installation you're talking about, but moving that sensor may actually help the situation. So yes, there's challenges with it, but you would also have manual override in spaces. If somebody walked in and they said, "This is too dark for me," they would have the ability to increase the light levels for comfort.
I think lastly, we just want to mention that there will be a complete service upgrade, and that size of the service will be dependent on fully electrification or a combination of the two, gas and electric option. And Now we're on to fire protection. And Andrew, I'm not sure how much the folks have been down this road about fire protection and some of the issues we have to deal with. But I think it's important that we just touch base upon a couple different options we have. And some of the struggles, as you probably know, is trying to find a location for a very large storage tank. So we have two options to deal with the fire protection system. One is a more conventional system where we would have a 25,000 to 30,000 gallon storage tank on site or in an adjacent site. We would then have a fire pump, a diesel driven fire pump, which would generate water pressure to distribute water into the sprinkler system and ultimately through the sprinkler heads themselves. The tank is about 12 feet in diameter, 30 feet long. And in addition to that tank, you need a fire pump room somewhere near or on top of the tank to house the fire protection equipment. And as you know, we're struggling to find a home for the tank due to ledge and some other setback conditions and space on the property. We've been looking for, yes.
So just to summarize, I mean, this is the option that we have been discussing with you all for a few months now, and where we landed on the only even close to plausible location is the abandoned fire building adjacent to the street. But there is a potential alternate that Peter's about to go through.
And so as an alternative solution, there's a system called a water mist fire protection system. And the difference between the two is under a conventional fire protection system, the water coming out is very large droplets, and it's basically coming out at a couple gallons per minute per head. And so it floods the entire building. And so if you've ever seen a sprinkler head go off, and it's not like the movies, but if you watch the heads go off, it can be ultimately destructive to the environment. Once the fire goes out, they don't shut off until somebody manually shuts them off. Water mist systems are used typically in high value environments, such as collections, museums, data centers, and it does exactly what it says. It's a water mist system. So instead of having conventional water droplets, this compresses the liquid down to a high pressure. And I think maybe the best way we could do it is take a power washer. You ever seen the water coming off of the Shedra power washer? Well, that's about 2,500 PSI. This is about 10,000 PSI. So your water droplets are significantly smaller. You know, what it does, it creates a mist in the space. And so you're using about 1/10 of the water per head or even less. And that means that we can have 1/10 of the water, in rough numbers, stored. So our storage capacity would be reduced from 25 to 30,000 to somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 gallons of water, which I think might be a little bit more amenable to finding a home for that on the site. The caveat is, in order to get that pressure so high, there's a compression system, pumps, and storage tanks with nitrogen that are needed to drive the motor to compress it and to inject the nitrogen into the system to create that water mist. It's not a specialty system. It's a little uncommon. It's uncommon in conventional buildings, and primarily due to cost. And you would need probably a third party to do the maintenance on it and verify it. Now, if we try to balance the total cost of dealing with the ledge, dealing with the remote tanks, the two systems become closer in a final project cost scenario.
And so you'll remember from our previous presentations that the cost of this cistern was roughly, cistern fire protection system is roughly $500,000. And that cost is pretty unique to this project because of the lack of water. And so this mist system may be, if you were to present a mist system to on a different project that has access to the required water pressure, it would just be thrown off the table immediately. But this specific context, it may kind of level out with this system that we'd previously been looking at together. And it's complex, but the previous system was also complex and was potentially and could potentially create a like an eyesore at the abandoned fire station, and create just kind of construction issues as well. So that's why we've been trying to come up with alternate solutions, and this MIST system is unique, but does have potential in the design.
Andrew, I just want to add, one other point. I'm not sure if Peter said it or not, but this MIST system is going to eat into square footage in the building,
I was just about to bring that up.
not in an insignificant way.
Denise has a question.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that was my question is, you've talked about nitrogen tanks and other pressurized equipment. So that would all be inside the building versus needing space outside the building?
Correct. It would be inside the building. Well, inside the building, and preferably maybe there's a bump out or something, little addition to house the equipment. But the fire department could get access directly from the exterior to it. Right now, we
And-
don't. Go
Sorry.
ahead, please.
And this was discussed when you met with the fire chief a few weeks ago?
Yes. Yeah, they were on board with it. Again, this is all NFPA compliant. There's special guidelines for it, but it's uncommon in these type of facilities due to cost. Because if you have as Andrew said, if you have a water main and we can do a tie-in, then this doesn't make sense at all for this application. But if you compare a $500,000 cost for the cistern, the fire pump, and everything else that goes along with that, this system is certainly an option to deal with, because we believe the cost would be at or slightly less than that $500,000. But there are caveats, and there are some issues that we would have to overcome. One of them, looking forward, would be the bidding. Given that they're a specialty system, and designed per each manufacturer is slightly different. So if we work with a single manufacturer, we would want to make the recommendation to go sole source, which is a challenge in the state bidding laws. It's not, can be done, but it could be a challenge for us to get that.
Lisa?
Can you just say a little bit about the square footage that would be lost? It's a small space already, and that's kind of a scary phrase.
We're not sure, but somewhere, could be 300 to 350 square feet.
Yeah, we're on the side. We're working with a vendor or a connection that one of our fire protection engineers has with a vendor to try to get our arms around that. But I think what Peter said is likely.
And can you say something about the difference in the maintenance costs and what that would present to the town?
I really don't have a good number on that. I mean, all fire pumps, all fire systems have to be maintained in third party, and then they do your testing. So I don't know what that costs the town. But the only thing is you do have a variety of folks that can do it. You probably have somebody on board that's doing your town offices as it is. This one, you'd be basically locked into the vendor that provided the equipment. And I really don't know what those costs are. We can ask, and we can get you an estimate on that.
Okay, great. Kat?
Thanks. Yeah, Lisa definitely got two of my questions, so that's great. Yeah, I think before we as a group can make the, our feedback for you, we would need to know those cost differentials. And so my question about the square footage, is that spread throughout the building, or is it something where you tuck it into one area and that houses whatever system requirements are needed?
It would be tucked into one corner of the building.
Okay. And then my other question is in terms of like the gas versus electric hot water pump and this if we do go with this water mist protection system, is there a big difference in cost up front for something like, say that, like if it's an electric hot water heater versus a gas hot water heater?
So going back to the heating, building heating hot water system, the equipment costs for electric, I believe, is slightly more expensive than the conventional gas-fired equipment. Gases, the condensing gas boilers are so common that they're very competitive on the market right now. So the electric is coming up. It's starting to get competitive, but the initial cost will be more expensive for the equipment. But the real large cost would be to increase the amount or increase the service size to the building.
Right,
we're
like
getting
it
to-
basically the transformer or whatever it is, whatever electric needs of the building, that is what the increased cost is. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes. So basically would have to, I think the rough numbers we were looking at is about double the amount of capacity coming into the building.
Just to go from a gas water heater to an electric water heater?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, thank you for that information.
And we hate to
So
be the
we're-
bearer of bad news, but Jeff and I were kicking around some numbers with this because there's an increased cost, and this is why I think it's important to have these conversations and try to educate and have a good discussion about the choices. And we understand that there's a goal here, but there's a cost associated. And Jeff and I were kicking around some numbers earlier today that to go fully electrified in this building, which would mean we put the electric hot water backup heat, and we probably use that a little bit more, increase the electric service, increase costs in the HVAC system by installing what's called the hyperheat, or the ability to go down to low temperature, low ambient temperatures and have the heat. I hate to say this, but we're kind of thinking around between $250 to maybe $300 plus $350,000
As an increase. in
increase.
overall expense. Okay. So basically, like, again, so as mechanical engineers, your recommendation is to try to get as much electric as you can, but to keep costs and other things like that in mind. Like, I'm just asking this because, like, we have a vote coming up right on Saturday, so I'm sure people are going to ask, what is the impact of this on current projects or on future projects? So if you're telling me that the current impact of that decision will be a $300,000 increase, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank
Rough
you.
numbers. But and we don't want to let that be the sole driver here. If the town really wants to go electrification, they can do that. We have set the system up that you could replace a gas boiler with an electric boiler. From a mechanical standpoint, there'd be little to no changeover. It's you take one out, put a new one back in.
Right.
So the overall, the air handling unit, the heat pumps, all the system components within the building don't change. It's literally plug and play.
And
To put it simply.
my understanding as well, and again, please let me know if this is not right. If you were also increasing your electrical needs, you then have to order, I want to say transformers, but I don't know if that's the right word. I just know that the last time we spoke with some people, they said, these things are on back order for years, or there was some kind of issue with getting more power to the building. So it's doubling the electrical needs, then adding to that timeline of, like, do you need more equipment to bring that electrical input into the building?
Not more equipment. The capacities and the sizing and the ratings of those equipment, their ability to carry that additional current that would be required to produce that heat. So the other thing to consider there as well is, once you go fully electric, you're relying on one source of energy to keep your building operational and to keep it from freezing under certain conditions, as Peter was talking about. You can have an electric boiler you can have the ultra low temperature heat pumps. But if you lose electricity, and when do you lose electricity? During weather events. And now you have a building that is potentially, once a building freezes, there's a whole different set of conditions to worry about. And so I know I sound like a broken record. It is balancing the resiliency and reliability and the efficiency. The system that Peter has proposed is a major step towards towards decarbonization, yet providing the town and the community some level of reliability or redundancy within the system. So, but as Peter said, it can be done. And if the town decides that that's the path they want to go down, then we're here to support it.
Awesome. And so, but if you have hot water heater on gas and you lose power, like that's what we have at our house, then the hot water heater continues to heat the building, correct? But in the electric one, it won't.
Yeah, we still have some, well, you probably need a generator because you still need some power to drive the boiler and the pumps.
Yep.
But it'd be a much smaller generator. It's something that somebody could go in and sort of rig up something to keep the building warm if you're getting to that point.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
And Morgan has a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Morgan, just
Yeah, go ahead.
What we're talking about right now, it's outside of my bounds really, but it shouldn't affect how you vote in the coming week. This project isn't held by the same bounds that the stretch code is holding some other projects to. There are some things we can work around here, so we're flexible and able to make these decisions. We don't have to let the code decide for us for this specific project. But
good point, Andrew. Good point.
Yeah, so we're not telling you to vote one way or another just to get this project done. I just want to make that clear, Kat. Sorry. Morgan.
Yep. So this is slightly tangential and perhaps directed at the Colliers folks, but there has been, let me rephrase. Would it be possible to get a little write-up in your next recap for us that in brief captures some of these reasons why the project costs have gone up, including fire protection system, et cetera? Because I think one of the things we had talked about way back when was trying to keep the public informed of what's going on, but by redirecting them to the same information wherever it is shared. And so I'd love for that to not have to come from specifically a building member. And if we can just sort of have something to say, hey, I understand that there are rumors going around that the building project has increased. Yes, generally speaking, costs have gone up, but it is in large part due to some of these unforeseen things. It might be really helpful in just sort of soothing people's fears about the expanded costs. So this just was a segue for that, but it would be, I think it would go a long way.
I can talk to John and Andrew tomorrow when I have our follow-up.
Okay. I just think it'd be nice to be able to copy and paste something and say, yes, the rumors are true, but it's not because we're going crazy with Slate. It's because, we have to bring things up to code.
Sure.
We've done a lot of those types of talks over the last year or so.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna not stop anytime soon, unfortunately.
No.
So the one
Thank
thing
you.
I would touch base upon, and John, you could probably chime in on this, is there are some rebates available, and I know John and Arnie are working towards getting a better handle on the rebates and what they're available for and the dollar value, which may help to offset some of these additional costs. So John, do you want to just bring us up to speed where you are on that?
Yeah. So we have started the process of looking into the Green Communities Decarbonization Grant. It is a decarbonization grant. So by bringing in a backup system using gas, I don't know what the implications are exactly. We did just do this on a somewhat recent project. I actually have the drawings up right now, trying to find out if we had gas backup on their system. But yeah, I mean, to answer the question in a more brief way, we are starting that process of looking into the grants and through MassSave and your utility provider, Eversource, we are looking at their incentive program. So there are grants and incentives out there. We're looking into them, and we don't have any dollar amounts that we can report to you as of tonight, but we're certainly working on them. And
so that with that grant adds a kind of another variable to this really wide question, because these grants add up to what could be significant savings or a significant funding source. But in order to maximize those grants, we need to take a potential big risk that Peter is talking about. Or I mean, need is a harsh word in that sentence, but so like if I just hypothetically, if we were to go full electric, then maybe we could get the full decarbonization grant. But if we have a gas backup, we may not get the full decarbonization grant. But also, if we go full electric, it will make the projects more expensive, but we may get more savings through the grant. So there's this complexity within the funding that I think Peter and John were slightly getting at there, that we unfortunately won't be able to just guess that we're going to get the full funding with one of these designs or not. So that's another item that we're weighing with this decision, but it also shouldn't be the driving factor for this decision. It should be about what's best for the town, what's best for the town's future as well.
Yeah, agreed. And then, so that decarb grant is an example that I mentioned earlier. It's a $500,000 grant. If it's at its maximum, which is enticing, but if we were to have to go full electric using electric boilers for an additional cost of upwards of $350,000, or so, it starts to beg the question, how far do we want to go, and then we're talking about that potentially that MIST system for an additional cost. I just feel like we're starting to get into the realm, and Andrew, you kind of touched on it, where it's not a clear answer right now. So with that, I mean, what I want to do, and my taking notes this evening, is I want to do a little bit of fact checking on a couple of previous projects to see exactly what routes they went, and report back to the committee. I mean, we're not making any decisions tonight, are we? We're not voting on anything this evening, are we? Andrew? No, right?
Well, we're not planning to, but we would like to hear whether the committee would find it acceptable to have a mixed fuel building or not. But there's no vote required for that. Just more of opinions, subjective.
I think Frank had a question.
Frank has a question.
Everybody does. Frank.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any kind of, and you don't have to answer this right away, is there like a space difference between having an electric boiler versus gas boiler? How much room it might take up?
Not much. I mean, the electric's a little bit bigger because you have multiple elements. It's a larger footprint, but they're not as tall. So I would say, roughly 15 to 20% larger, which should still fit within the mechanical room space that's been provided.
Lisa?
So just because we are thinking a little harder about this evening, can you give us a a more detailed update of where things stand with the cistern project? It sounds like that's becoming a more difficult option. Can you talk about how difficult?
I mean, it's just as difficult as we've discussed, but the difficulties are kind of becoming real. So we've we've actually drilled some holes and we found some bedrock pretty high up. So just less than 10 feet in some places below the grade level. So the like kind of the top level of dirt. And so that limits how far down we can bring the cistern. It also may add complexity to how we're actually pulling the water from the cistern site over to the building, which in itself is a cost, which is not really a normal cost on a project. The storage tank, we have been able to make slightly smaller. We had previously estimated a 40,000 gallon tank. We've been able to reduce that down to a 25,000 gallon tank. But the cost here isn't really in the plastic tank. It's mostly in the pump that is also housed within kind of its own structure. So that would be
the pump, the housing, the heating elements to keep it warm, and and placing that on the site too. So, we're very lucky at Fitzway. We have a couple great industry leading fire protection experts and code consultants on board. And we've been trying to solve this problem for a significant amount of time. We've looked at the possibility, and these come up brainstorming ideas, and we just sat down over lunch and we said, what ifs? So let's just take this and throw a bunch of things at the dartboard and see what sticks. And we went from vertical tanks, outside vertical tanks and some of the complications of that, because that would have to be heated. We'd have to keep the water warm, and there's going to be added utility costs. We've looked at, maybe partially burying these tanks on the site, on the old fire station site, and then berming and basically creating another 5 or 10 feet of soil above this tank to try to keep it warm and quote call it below grade. So we've really have done a lot of homework and a lot of research and a lot of effort to try to solve this issue. And unfortunately, there are no good solutions. There is no easy solution for this.
Okay,
Can
Kat.
I just, I'm sorry, Tina, can I just add to that? Lisa, one of the other complications that we've had that we've talked about is obviously the PFAS situation. So with the building itself, looking to excavate and add on, there are costs associated with having to remediate the soil, potentially the water in the soil, and looking at a cistern that has to go so far underground would only add to that. We've been working with our licensed site professional and trying to get some estimates on, where the ground is most contaminated, where we could potentially put this. Andrew mentioned a water main earlier at the library. There's also a water main that runs through the center of the former fire station parking lot, which we would have to take into consideration. So the thought of putting this size tank in the ground, I think in a normal situation is costly, but then add to it that it's the site of a large contamination that we have to deal with those costs as well.
Thank you. Okay, Kat.
I just wanted to make a very quick comment. I'm sure you guys have looked at this, but just so you guys are aware, we're not an Eversource community. I don't think. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but we as residents cannot apply for those grants because we don't pay into that system. So I don't know how that works with municipalities, with whatever grants you're talking about, but I just want to make sure that that is somewhere in your radar that we're one of 5 communities in the state that don't pay into that system, so we can't get money out of it.
There are HLP incentives. I think that's what John was referring to earlier. That it's the
John's
same.
giving the look that that's not, he said Eversource.
He said
But anyways, yeah,
Eversource.
whatever,
but-
you know, the
right.
Hudson Light would be great, but like, I know when I, like, you know, for a mini split, you get $200 from Hudson Light, but you could get like, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 from the state, but we're just not eligible. So I just wanted to make sure that was on someone's radar. Thanks.
Sunny.
Yeah, this may have been clarified before. I'm not sure. So if it has, please let me know. But in regard to the fire protection systems, specifically the conventional cistern, I know there was some discussion at some point about potentially putting that in the old fire station building instead of underground. I don't know if that's still an option or anything like that. I know there's been a lot of complications with the PFAS and the bedrock and things like that. So I think to make an informed decision, we kind of have to know more about the direction of the cistern project and then what, you know, so we can weigh it against the water mist system.
So I'll just say from the town's perspective, we were never looking at inside the former fire station. So that's not an option because that would limit our potential reuse of that building if we needed it for any other purpose. So that was not something that we would support.
Okay, let's go back to Peter. He's still working on his presentation here.
That was it. Sorry, I think we touched base on all the different systems.
Okay.
And I think I
Thank
certainly
you.
appreciate the interaction and great questions. If there's anything else we can do, if there's any other questions, you know, please reach out to us.
Great, thank you. Andrew, are you going to talk about a schedule review or?
I believe I went over the schedule
Earlier.
earlier.
Okay, great. All right, well
So
then.
I guess we
Yeah.
will be meeting again in just a few weeks.
Yep.
We'll have
Maybe
updates on
24th.
mostly the architectural stuff, but we can provide updates on the MEP as well. And I look forward to it.
All right.
Thank you all so much for joining today. Another relatively short meeting, but
Well, we have a little bit to go. We have, but yeah, we're going on 2 hours, so
Yeah.
we need to set our bar differently, I think. All right, I'm gonna move on to John at Colliers for his updates.
Okay, well, I can be relatively brief. I'll need someone to stop sharing. It says for me to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, so on my screen is going to hopefully appear
Yep.
The Colliers monthly progress report. This is the first of what will be many. So we start off our report talking about the progress during the previous month. That in this case would be April, but Andrew had done such a great job covering so much of this, I'm not going to belabor it. Schematic design cost estimates, as we know, came in last month. We had the exterior committee workshops. EFI Global was on site doing their asbestos survey of the existing building. They also started to do a phase 1 environmental assessment to determine, as Denise had mentioned earlier, the PFAS situation, the soil contamination. But as it turns out, the town does have PFAS money. So we are going to sort of cut ties, at least with EFI on that scope of work. And we're going to have the town's LSP continue on to do the site investigation. EFI Global is going to continue to do their building survey to quantify and determine what we have for asbestos inside the building. So that will continue. We expect their report any day now. Department meetings, as Andrew said, had taken place, a marathon of department meetings. I won't talk any more about that. I do just want to mention that Colliers is now under contract on the town's behalf with Ryder Levitt Bucknell. They're a professional cost estimator. We do a lot of work with them. They have a lot of library experience. So they'll be providing a cost estimate along with Design Labs cost estimator on the DD set. of drawings, so it'd be good to get their expertise and knowledge and insight on the industry and what they're seeing, the trends, et cetera. And with the goal of having the most accurate cost estimate possible at design development. Look ahead for May. Exterior committee and public forum that happened on the 3rd. This is all stuff that's already happened, May 5th. Yeah, so I mentioned that I met with Eversource. It was Eversource, or at least someone from Eversource, about the Mass Save incentive program, and we are potentially committing to a Path 3 incentive process. So I know Arnie from the Green Advisory Committee is planning to meet with Denise tomorrow to discuss this in more detail, and we'll share the results of that at the next meeting. We have a series of workshops coming up in the month of May. We do have to coordinate a septic inspection. And I already mentioned Wilcox and Barton's going to be doing soil testing. We're tracking issues, including the cost. The schematic design cost estimate came in above what we had originally established as the town's budget. And again, soil contamination on site is an issue we're currently tracking. As part of the monthly report, you are going to see the financial status report. It still carries the town's original budget for this project of 6.5 million. The only changes you're going to see in this report are highlighted. They are the hazmat consultant, EFI Global, now under contract here for $7,700. And the owner's cost estimator that I mentioned, Ryder Levitt Bucknell, for $9,500. They're now under contract. It's the only change. And lastly, we do include schedule as part of our monthly reports, so I'm not going to go through this whole schedule. The idea here is to capture every milestone that's pertinent to the project. It's basically a roadmap that gets us from A to B. As you know, we're currently in design development. And one thing I do want to note, and something I'm starting to track, is we do plan to hire a commissioning agent for the project. So that would be a third-party engineer that would do a testing and verification of your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems. It's something we recommend and do on just about all of our projects. We would solicit and hire them on the town's behalf. And that's something that we would advertise for. I'm going to probably do that at the end. And with that, we do have the DD cost estimates due in mid-June, I believe. And I do want to schedule a reconciliation meeting with both cost estimators in the month of June. So cost estimate reconciliation is basically an all-day meeting when with both estimators going essentially line by line through their estimates and comparing scope, making sure they fully understand the drawings, and then again, coming up with the most accurate cost estimate possible. So with that, I think I'm going to conclude my OPM report for the evening. So I intended to be brief. Hopefully I was brief enough. Any questions?
I don't see any. So with that, we'll move on to approving the invoice that Denise sent out from Colliers earlier today. And since we're on Zoom, I need to do roll call. So please say yay or nay or abstain when I call your name. Denise?
Can I make the motion first, Tina?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the April invoice for Colliers in the amount of $8,364.38.
Do I have a second?
Seconded, Morgan.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Okay, so now I'll do my roll call. Denise?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Tina is a yes. Lisa?
Yes.
Kat?
Yes.
Aisha?
Yes.
Sunny?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was unanimous. All right, so are there any other items that any committee members have to bring up that we didn't anticipate?
Just one last thing, which is I unfortunately had to join a little bit late. Are we able to have the original, like the renderings that we were going over in the beginning circulated just for us to look at? Or are they going to be posted on the town site or something?
This presentation tonight?
Yeah, the ones with like the interior views in white with the, yeah.
Yes. So Andrew, once he sends that to me, I'll post it on the website with the video of the
Great.
meeting tomorrow morning.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else?
Motion to adjourn at 8:20.
You beat me to it. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All
All
right,
in favor?
all in favor? I'm getting there. Yay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
See you
you.
in a couple weeks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a
for
good
your
night.
Guys, have a good night.
Bye.